Adam, welcome to our podcast.
Allie, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah. Today we're going to talk to our friend Joe, and we actually went to college with Joe.
We did go to college with Joe.
We weren't like BFFs, but...
And I mentioned this in the episode, but when we met Joe, he was playing in a band at college.
And I didn't, so I don't know that.
And you definitely knew that.
Okay, well, I don't remember it.
Whatever, because if guys are in bands, then girls like them.
I was dating you.
I know, but you probably were like, oh, but band people.
No, I don't.
I have no musical talent.
I've
and
never
I'm a little
dated
insecure about
anyone
it.
who's a musician.
Really?
So that's not my type. So please don't learn how to play the guitar.
I used to be in a choir, but I was not good.
Yeah.
And I have video evidence to prove that.
Yeah, yeah.
If you ever hang out with my mom, she probably has a VHS tape of me performing. Sometime I was given a solo when I shouldn't have been, probably.
Yeah.
Anyways, Joe runs his own business.
Correct.
And he has this really creative name. He's a consultant, and he named his business
Joe Hamgeri Consulting.
Joe Hamgeri Consulting, right? In case you were curious about who the person was.
I love it. It's straightforward. I know what he does.
He's not as good.
He works with businesses on taxes.
He does tax accounting and
CFO for hire.
CFO services, right?
Yeah. So we talked to him about how he got into that, the different types of people that he works with, what makes a good client, what a lot of businesses do wrong when it comes to finances.
Yeah, so
and
part of his
structuring.
Part of his past.
Right now, our dog is trying to just jump up on my lap.
Just let him do whatever. It doesn't matter. This is his house. We're all living in Desh's world.
It's true.
Hashtag Desh life.
But I love talking about the things that affect businesses in the long run and the things that really trip people up. And
so what he did in a past job, he actually did business evaluations. Mm-hmm. So he's done over 400 evaluations of businesses where he gets hired to come in and assess, when a business is being sold or they're bringing in a new partner. To me, I was like, oh my gosh, you've been inside of the books and the guts of businesses that have been around for 30 or 40 years, and someone's trying to sell. And it's just fascinating. So much wisdom in there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. Joe's in Indianapolis, and he has a remarkable Instagram feed with amazing food.
Yeah, he's really into food. He talks a little bit about what inspires him beyond just food, but how he likes helping people, the types of people that he works with, characteristics of an ideal client, which I think is important for everyone to think through.
Yeah, nobody when they meet Joe probably assumes tax accounting.
For sure.
Right? Like they think
he's cool.
He's cool. So
he's so cool.
Sorry for all the tax accountants we just offended.
Get a little cooler. No, I'm just kidding. Cooler. You guys are all cool. Hope you enjoyed the podcast.
But you're not Joe cool.
Oh, that was so good.
Oh, I know.
Okay, enjoy the pod.
Can we use that somewhere?
The episode title.
We should make an episode T-shirt.
Okay.
For Joe's, but you're not Joe
Each
cool.
episode gets a T-shirt.
Yeah.
He would probably be like, financially, that's a really dumb idea.
I want to do that, though. Because in one of our last episodes, nobody cares about this, but hey, it's our podcast.
We can do whatever we want.
So in one of our last episodes, we had Josie on, and she swore a lot, and she apologized for that. And I mentioned it when I shared that on Facebook. I was like, hey, just, if you're offended by bad words, then probably just don't listen to this.
Yeah.
And then she tagged her mom, and she's like, oh, it's because of Mama Joe. And then her mom commented and said, we can say those words, but we can't do them.
That's amazing.
It was so good. And I was like, we should have an episode shirt that's like Mama Joe's quote.
We can just make graphics. We don't have to make a shirt.
I want to make shirts of anything that's important.
If you're listening to this still, enjoy the podcast. Goodbye. Hello, Joe. Welcome to our podcast.
Hey, Allie and Adam. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for being on it. We are really excited to talk to you today about how you got into doing your own thing and owning your own business. Adam has the questions pulled up, but we'll let it be very conversational and let us talk through some of those things. So why don't you explain how you got started and how that's evolved into what you do now? Just because we assume it never is exactly what you think when you first start owning your own business and being an entrepreneur.
It never is.
No.
Well, first, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be part of your podcast. So about about a year and a half ago now, in February, I worked for a public accounting firm here in town, and it kind of got to the point where I knew at some point I wanted to start my own thing, and so I left the firm, and it was kind of right at the beginning of tax season. So I started out, doing taxes, and just really put my head down and try to, find some clients and put together, a website. And it's just a few things that would help me, be able to kind of, do that well.
Yeah. And talk about it like it feels like a real thing.
Right. Which was a kind of a struggle at first, just my mindset, thinking about like, oh, am I doing this? Like, is this a business? And then having these moments of feeling like, oh, this is a business. Wait, I'm doing this. This is a thing.
Yeah. And then translating that to everyone that you are asking, like, can you pay me now for this thing? Like, I think it's confidence within yourself. And then you want the client to feel that, even if you're not totally sure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Allie and I stayed recently. Allie and I, we stayed up late one night when we were just talking about the Wonder Jam and work that we're doing and stuff that we want to be doing sometime in the future. And there was this part of me that was like, half of my brain feels like so confident that we've done such a good job. And then the other half of my brain is like, we are the worst business owners. And
what are we even doing?
Yeah. And it's just this constant, oh my gosh. I wonder if anyone just walks around being like, I honestly think I've got it going on.
Yeah. Maybe. I doubt it.
At all times.
Yeah. So Joe, you were like website, like giving it a name. Is it just you? Talk us through like what that was like.
Yeah. So I think it was like the second week of February, first or second week. So I wanted to move pretty quickly because tax season starts. The first time you can file a return is like January, like mid-January. So like January 15th.
Okay.
So we're,
You just made all of our listeners get anxious. Like everyone just got anxiety.
They're like, wait, we're talking taxes now?
So, in terms of timing, tax season is only like 3.5 months. So I was like, I need to get going. So I didn't want to be too complicated, but I did think a lot about the process because I kind of didn't want to do like what tax season feels like at a firm, even though I've never worked for a firm. But I've had a lot of friends, obviously that are in accounting that have, and I just wanted to do it smoother. And there's some process things. So there were some process things that I immediately kind of, set my mind to, and then just figuring out, okay, so if I do get a client or someone who asks me to do their taxes, then, how does that play into like my process? And some of it was sort of website related. So, I think that was kind of the first thing, was figuring out the process and then figuring out how it played into like technology and how do I, work with clients in that way.
Yeah.
So
almost like a repeatable process too. Like you want to be organized so that when, 2, 3, 4, 5 people say yes, that you're not just scrambling each time you kind of focus in on their work.
And of course, the first time around, I was like, this is going to be the best process. This is amazing. I thought possible thing. It's going to be awesome. And, second time around, I was like, scrap. Not again, it's the whole thing. It was really good, but you just learn things.
For sure. Oh,
and so I think something I've learned is, when you start something, you might think like, oh, this is great. I have everything down. I know what you thought through like everything your clients, would want or need, but that's just not the reality. Like you're going to find out, oh, they don't want this. They don't care about that. So
what were some of the things that you found that your clients like didn't care about that you thought they would, or things that weren't part of your process that you kept on?
So a lot of my clients want to know like when. So one thing was like they want to know if everything was filed. So I put information, and then I would file everything, and I would tell them like, okay, in a couple hours things should be accepted or rejected, and what that meant. But a lot of times people are like, so are we done? Is there anything?
Is it good?
Are we okay?
Yeah.
So just putting kind of a just adding one more thing to the process and just letting them know, hey, everything is filed. Where we go from here,
Yeah. Yeah. Like, is this done, or I need more things from you? It's sort of that like limbo after a project's
Right.
over.
So that was one thing. Clients don't really, I guess some clients cared about like kind of the details of their taxes, but most people didn't. Like, they didn't care to know. They didn't really understand. So for me, I just had to kind of think through what's helpful for them to know. And most of that has just been changes. Like, there are big changes that I either know about that are coming up, next year. They told me like they're going to buy a house or they're going to have a kid or something like that. Actually, it's funny because I get to know like people pretty like their personal lives,
Yeah.
But people just want to know kind of, if I owe $3,000 this year, am I going to owe that next year? Or if I got a huge return this year, if I move, to do 2 different states, or I become self-employed, like what's going to happen? So being able to kind of give clients a, just kind of projection of what's happen. I think that's been something that I think clients have really appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of, I think sometimes when we're good at, or we're confident in the skill share that we're offering, it's easy to just put your head down and work. But I love that you're bringing up those sort of check-in points, even after it's over or in the process. Or we found like if we can make a suggestion for the future year or the next phase of the project, it almost relaxes people. It doesn't overwhelm them because this is their life, like they want to sort of understand the big picture. Or their status with you, even as a vendor or a partner.
How did you, so when you start doing, you started in the middle, did you start before tax season on purpose? Like, was that a strategic thing? Was that like, people will need a lot of help from me at this specific point so I can jump?
Yeah. So let me go back a little bit. So like I think it's 5 or 6 years now. So I've done taxes on some level every year, ever since I graduated from college. And, but I only did a few returns, and it was kind of because I liked doing taxes. I mean, I never thought I would, but I took this tax class, and
you like doing taxes?
It's weird, but
amazing.
What the
family,
heck?
my family's returns are just friends, and just to kind of keep in the know, because there changes every year, and I enjoyed it, and I thought maybe at some point I'll either do it for a firm or for myself or something. So I had started like last year, like before tax season started. I mean, I'd kind of gotten my things together, but I didn't have a website. Like, I didn't have all. I just kind of used a kind of a cheaper professional tax software. So I was kind of set, but I switched softwares. I had to think about, if I had kept a new client, because before that, it was just like, I knew who I was going to do taxes for. There might have been 1 or 2 other people that have been like, hey, can you help me or whatever.
Yeah.
There was one other thing I was going to say about,
getting started. I asked about getting started, or did you start during tax season on purpose? There's a lot of people who I talk to who talk about being unsure of when to jump from their part-time thing into their full-time thing. And they're always curious of like,
how strategic should it be?
How strategic do I be? Or do I just like quit my job and start doing
stuff?
It
wasn't strategic for me. It was just kind of, it just all happened. And I'm kind of glad it happened, because it might have happened 2 years later. I was one of those people who said, I'm going to stay at my job for 3 years. And then when I was there for 3 years, I'm going to be there for 2 more years. And I'm really glad I didn't do that for a lot of different reasons. But so for me, I kind of ended up just jumping into it. I've met with a lot of people who have also asked that question of like, hey, I've got a job, but I'm like thinking about doing this. Like, should I leave my job? So I probably wouldn't have. The other thing with me is like, if I had launched into like full, business mode, kind of like I did in February, while at the firm I was at, there's like, there's kind of the competing. So,
right. You had to sort of make that, like, cut that off. Yeah.
So it wasn't strategic in my case.
It was more of a necessity.
Right.
So in a world where when you got started, taxes for just every generic person in the world, I mean, I'm thinking most people probably just select a tax accountant just based on their how much return can you get me, right? Like how big of a refund can you get me, and then
how much does this cost? Yeah.
How much does this cost? Is there anything else that you did to kind of set yourself apart or position yourself differently or attract a certain type of client?
Yes. So one thing that I mean, through the years of doing taxes and, kind of getting not like a huge number of clients a year, but just some new people, I found that a lot of people, like the person who did their taxes was like, unless it was TurboTax or it was, they went to H&R Block or something like that. A lot of people, like, they use their like mom's accountant or their mom's friend's accountant. In some cases, they never even met the person. Like, they didn't even know who was doing their taxes.
Oh, wow.
They, if they, let's say they owed like $3,000, they would be like, yeah, I'm not sure what happened. We always owe every year. And, like they didn't know why, and they like nothing changed the next year. So, so I think having some clarity around that, like, why did I owe $3,000? So anytime I have a client that owes a significant amount of, money of their taxes, I explain, in a way they can understand why that happened. And then we correct it, if next year, unless there's any significant changes. So I think that's something that I thought about. The second thing was being able to kind of like find me or kind of understand the process, because a lot of people, like I said, they would, it was their friend's mom or someone that was like kind of distant from them. And it was like they would give them their taxes, and then like there would just be this magical train of stuff happening, and then they would get it back and they'd be like, I guess I think it's right. And in some cases, people, that would happen, and then, they'd get a letter from the IRS, and then, they have no idea. They still didn't know what was happening, even when the accountant was resolving the issue. So for me, with the website, it was important to kind of like just go through the process. Or when I would have a new client, I would send them kind of this email that was like explaining, like, here's what's going to happen. And like, the feedback I got from people was very much of they felt good. Like a lot. And I didn't realize this. I mean, I kind of knew this, but like a lot of people have anxiety about taxes. One of my clients last year, like, sat down to do her taxes and had a bottle of wine.
She's like, I can't. I need help.
So I think, letting people know the process of what's happening, letting people know, if their taxes are messed up or if they owe lots of money, let them know why that's happening. Or if they have a year where, they're going to get a big return, like letting them know, hey, that's not going to happen next year because of reason.
And not letting that become just a normal expectation, while also, I don't know, I think you're learning, we're all learning this, but when you own your own business, you should understand more about your business than you think. So it'd be easy to think, oh, I'm just going to outsource this. I don't need to know anything, but I don't think that's really true. And you're incorporating a little bit of education and context so that, at the end of the day, this is their business and this is their tax filing. Yeah,
so much of it, I think, whether you're a photographer or freelance designer or you're starting your own coffee shop, is you really do create that experience for somebody to receive your services, but also understand what's going on and why does it matter. We have a coffee shop here in Columbus called One Line Coffee, and their baristas practice telling the story of their coffees and drinks, and they specifically the one of the owners talked to me about, I don't want to give people too much information because that just, people just glaze over. But I want to give them the right information that helps them. It's all about them enjoying the cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And I think of that analogy a lot when we're working through coaching or we're working through workshops we're putting together. Like, it's one thing to tell everybody the right thing to do and they should just blindly listen to you. But it's another thing to present all of that, your work, your information, your business, in a way that other people, like, they get it and it helps them enjoy the whole experience more, be excited about it. I think that's really cool. You kind of have talked to, because I know as you and I spent some time talking, it was we were talking. You come across a lot more as almost like a business partner or another partner in somebody's business. And I remember that's kind of, you had talked about you were working in consulting or something like coaching. And then as I was talking to you, I was like, oh, you're really paying a lot of attention to the financial pieces of this. But I think it's obvious as you talk through this whole thing that you've done it.
You've always felt that, yeah.
Like at a more connected level than, hey, give me all of your
typical
books and then I'll file your taxes and we'll be done. You're involved. Like, what else are you involved in? So you're doing this. You're doing people's taxes. You're doing people's like what other?
Maybe like talk us through that first period last year where you made the transition to now and how that evolution has taken place.
So taxes is one thing I do. The other thing is CFO services, which CFO stands for Chief Financial Officer. So I do that kind of like on a Chief Financial Officer for rent sort of situation. So when I started out, I was like, I'm going to do everything. I can do accounting, I can do services, I can do valuations, business valuations. I can do, just all these like short-term projects. And that was a horrible idea.
It was a lot.
It's so hard to focus on so many different things like that. And the process for each of those things was very different. So it took me a while to kind of learn. I think it was around October where I made some kind of decisions about my business, and those things really helped me. So right now, well, I guess I should get into this decisions. One of the decisions was only going to do tax work. I'm going to do CFO services, and I'll do accounting work that falls in a certain into my business model. And so with CFO services, that's the main thing I'm focusing on right now. It's helping businesses evaluate their performance and then translating their like business activity into something that makes sense. And then creating metrics on business performance that are in line with their goals, or in some cases, it's like standard benchmarks, and then helping them evaluate ongoing, business performance and things like cash flow and profit margin. So that I love because it's very, it's kind of creative. It's helping, business owners make decisions about their business. One of the things I found, especially with taxes, I mean, really with all of what I do, is people a lot of times they want me to give them advice and they just want me to kind of tell them what I think they should do. They don't want there are 16 possibilities. They want what would you do? So I've had to kind of learn to, kind of tell people, here's the two options you have, or here's the three things I would recommend. Here's what I do, and here's why. And it just depends what falls in line with your, with your goals or with your intentions or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. How much time are you spending with a company in that CFO for rent role?
So on average, a month, I would say per client, it's about probably 8 to 12 hours a month. So it's very, a lot of it is kind of delivering the metrics, right? So it's helping them at the onset, it's helping them kind of create metrics that say hey, this is in line with your goal. And then just evaluating that over time, saying, okay, what's causing this to work? Because that's good, but we need to hone in on that, or what's causing, more issues, or what's causing cash flow issues. And sometimes it's process. I mean, a lot of times it's process related, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it goes into, hey, you need to talk to your operations person about this. You need to talk to your salesperson because there's something going on with your sales metrics, right? So it's not all financial necessarily, the metrics, but I mean, there are numbers at play.
Yeah. And those numbers just allow you to point to those holes or probably weak spots within the company. That's really cool.
Just about every client I've had with CFO services, they all think they know what's happening with their business. But when I ask specific questions like, oh, what's your profit margin? You know, and
that's so funny. It's like you're telling these stories, and Allie and I just have those conversations all the time. We have Mike Albert is someone who we work with in a similar capacity here locally, and he was sitting down with Allie and I one day, and he was like, we had no idea what our cash flow was. We had like no visibility into that, and he was like, how much longer, you know, with the invoice you have out and the bills that you owe, like
how much longer can you exist?
Yeah, how much longer were you till you hit zero?
We're like, I don't know.
And he's like, and he looked at us, and he did like this amazing counselor move. Is he's like, rather than being like, well, that's a problem, fix it. He was like, how does it make you feel to not know the answer to that question?
Really bad.
And I was like, okay, I feel like bad.
Well, I think I can relate, Joe, a lot in that a lot of the people that we work with, and this was even more so the case a year ago or 2 years ago, we wouldn't ask, you know, like let's say someone comes to us and wants to set up an online store or upgrade what they have to facilitate more sales or wholesale, and they couldn't tell us some of those numbers. They couldn't tell us how much they make a week or a month, what's their average order, you know, cost. And you know, it's like now that I have owned a business for 5 years, I get it. And the alert to me, like it almost signaled that they weren't sure when they'd be like, I think I have that somewhere filed away. I'll have to find it. And so we were able to gauge like, okay, there's a bigger discussion that has to happen before we try to sell something to them. Yeah. And that could be really detrimental, you know?
We've even seen, I've seen coaching clients I walk through who have a product that they're selling, and we start to dive into the margins. And we spent all this time talking about marketing, and their margins were garbage. You know, so they're making 20 cents per item or something when they should be making $7. Like just like ruins their margins. And you're like, you got to fix that first, because you're not going to fix it. Marketing is not going to help you very much.
Yeah.
It's just it's so common. There's a million things to pay attention to all the time. I want to ask another question about, I don't want to make you be like on the CFO hot seat the whole time. But I would be curious, of the people you've worked with in the past and owning your own business, if someone was listening to this today and let's say they are, what would be the things you're like, stop everything you're doing and figure out these numbers, figure out these metrics, get this thing done? Like, what would you tell someone to figure out?
So a couple of things. One would be like, what's your profit margin, right? So you make a sale, you get $100. Like, how much of that, like, do you keep? Because that's just a really important question. I had a client that, you know, was a salon, and you know, she had no idea what a profit margin was. And in 1 month it would be like 7%, and then the next month would be like 30, and then the next month it'd be -5. And I was like, what is happening? Like, we need to like understand what's going on. What it really came down to is that she was just purchasing really, you know, crazy amounts some months and then some months. And so it made her profit margin really volatile. So we just established a budget for purchase that, hey, well, based on your sales, this is what, you know, it should be around this number. And now she knows, okay, that's what it needs to be. And as sales go up, obviously that can increase, but went through and basically gave her like, I think 6 metrics for different things. One was the profit margin for sure. I think, for a lot of businesses, understanding like your sales break even point, right? So if I, have a certain amount of sales, what's the point where I start making money? Because, right, you have some expenses that are fixed, right? Like rent, let's say your space or something like that. Like, what's the point where I'm not making money and I'm not losing money? Because that's important, especially for like new businesses. For like one of my clients is they have a couple of restaurants, but they opened one recently. And that was it was one of the first things I did was let's do a sales break-even point. We found that sales were 20% lower than they needed to be. And so then that became the focus, was sales. Mm-hmm. So, and it won't just point out sales. It'll point out if expenses are out of line too. So I would say like knowing just like what your profit margin is, doing a sales break-even point analysis, and then also understanding what's happening with your cash flow. Like you should be able to go in, to your bank account and look at your balance and go, that's right. But a lot of people just go in there like, okay, I
this is what it is.
And, that can lead to problems when you just don't understand like you don't have to have like a crazy cash flow analysis. Just even knowing like, okay, my cash flow is healthy. That's at the point.
Yeah. Oh yeah. To be able to assess what's good for you at that point in your business is probably huge. I mean, it makes me think back to when I was younger and my mom's like, just because your checking account says this doesn't mean, that's true. And, balancing all of that on paper. I remember even thinking like it was transitioning into like having more accessibility with online, transaction logs and that even shifting. But my mom's still being like, no, you need to like, if you write a check for $25, you need to write that down. And I was
we
like
still
14,
have like 3 checks that are out to people that they haven't cashed. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
People are more in tune with those numbers, much more like they're much more amped when I talk to them because they're like same page and they're like, I understand like the health of my business. I understand where we're at and I know what to like focus on. And so that's big when people feel confused. And like you said, Adam, when Mike asked you, like, how does that make you feel? Like it's kind of nerve wracking because a lot of times like things aren't going well and then they don't know why. And like, they don't know what to do, but when like what the problem is, or, what you're focusing on to try to fix or to make better or to grow, you're just more you're more invested. You just feel more, I think, holistically ready to like tackle that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. You're able to also go a little easy on yourself in the areas that you're probably doing well. Like if you have the ability to work with someone like you or have the ability to take time to really look at what's going on with that sort of health of your business, you can also, focus and get better and set goals and ask for help with certain aspects, but then understand, no, this is a strength of our business, or this is where my strengths can better contribute as the CEO or,
I mean, I could see somebody who had a business paying attention. This is an example from our own life, but we have a team right now. There's 6 people who work for the Wonder Jam, and we are aggressively working on everybody getting paid better, to the point where we kind of run this like tension line of how do we like our cash flow to feel, like what feels good with that, and then how can we, if we get out ahead a little bit, do we always want to stay really far ahead with our cash flow, or do we want to, start to transition that into compensation for people? And how can we keep moving that in a healthy way and also maintaining some sense? So you're like walking this tightrope a little bit at financial goals. And I remember there was a day where Allie and I were frustrated by the number that was in our bank account, but we had to go back and look at, hey, this is like what we've done over the last 3 months. Like we've moved the needle on all these things that we're trying to move the needle on. And our bank account is at the same spot that it's always been at, And so it's this thing of there's been a lot of growth happening, but if we were just looking at one number, like what is that thing, we would be dramatically missing the point.
Yeah.
Which I think is such a it just numbers are just make us feel a certain way, and people seem to have really bad relationships with money, and it causes all sorts of frustration and anxiety. Do you find that when you're working with folks, are they expecting you to come in there and be a, spreadsheet guy who's like has no emotions and is just calculating, or do people value maybe the more empathetic human side that you bring into those relationships?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, a lot of people I was at one of my clients, owns, like I said, a couple of restaurants and a bar, and I came in and the owner was like, "Oh, this is my accountant," and one of his friends, they were like, "Whoa, that is not." I was not a guy in like a suit, with slacks and a white, button up. So that definitely happens.
Yeah.
But there are people I think that they appreciate when they feel like you're on their team, right?
Yeah.
Because they feel like someone's on board. Like, no, like Joe's not just charging me money because it's just a transactional thing. I mean, it is, but also, I'm helping people understand what's happening in their business because I want them to do business better. It's not just like I provide a service and it costs this much money.
Yeah. For sure. What, so how do you find or like assess if a client is a good fit for you? Has that shifted over the last year and a half? I know we do that. We kind of, get together and think who of our top clients been, why are they great clients? Why are they a great fit here?
I think one of the things is like, are they ready and are they committed? And that can mean different things for different people. But for me, one of the things was like with tax. This is one change I made from last year to this year, this past tax season. But I redid some of my pricing for taxes, and then I decided that I would only start doing taxes for someone after they had paid for the taxes. And the main reason I did that was not actually because I had any issues. Like, I think I had 98% collection by like the end of tax season. So
yeah, that's great.
But people were much more on top of getting me their information, because with tax season, that is the number one thing. That's like the thing that takes up my time, is just
getting everything,
emails back and forth and things like that. I also did switch the software I used, and so that was a huge help. But the biggest thing, people paid up front. They gave me everything, and then they're like, these two things are missing, and that's it. And it was just a much smoother season because, and taxes are not like thousands of dollars. They can be for companies, but people were just so much more like, it was I don't know, it felt like you were just like on a team challenge. We were like, all right, I got you my stuff. This is what I'm waiting for. Yeah. Here it is. And then it was just so much more smooth.
That's fascinating. Yeah. We changed our pricing structure, I don't know if it was 2 years ago, but we just found that, so for a lot of creative service people or freelancers who are getting started, they'll break it into like 50% up front, 50% at the end, or something like that. And we just found like we had this problem where projects could never end. And we were like, gosh, there's almost an incentive for people to drag their feet a little bit because they're not going to have to pay the bill. And in your case, it could be to the government or to you until they get you those files they need. So like if I do it next week, that's cool.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Versus what we do now is we structured our payments. We break our a website payment plan is broken down into 5 sections, and each of those sections is like a percentage of the project, but it's tied to our work and investment into it. And so there's never really a payment that happens. And the payments are also tied to meetings or presenting collateral. And it just helps the whole process be very seamless. Like, I'm about to show you all the logos I just spent hours crafting.
Yeah.
If you don't pay your bill by like the time we have that meeting,
we'll have a
like,
conversation.
I'm not going to show you,
Right.
you know, the logos until you show me the money.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And it's staggered
respect.
across and it's just a mutual thing. And it's made projects go insanely easier. And it just was this little tweak.
Small thing.
You know, yeah.
So small.
Oh, go ahead.
So, I was going to say, unless you want to keep going on that, I just want to hear, because you mentioned restaurants, bars, and we know you and your Instagram has like delicious food on it.
Heck yeah.
Do you
if
have
you ever
a niche?
want to be like, if you ever want to be persuaded that you should go spend like a weekend in Indianapolis,
Talk to
Joe's
Joe, yeah.
Instagram is probably one of the ones you should find.
It's why we went to the Garden Table.
Oh, that place is.
That's good. Yeah. So yeah, do you have like, did you set out to have like a niche, or you just like, is that just based on interest? Talk us through
somewhat. So with food, I mean, I just like love food. That's just like a thing that just exists in my my personality. But in terms of CFO services, I have to think about, okay, what kinds of clients do I want to have? But CFO services, I like working more with creative companies and technology-based companies, because a lot of kind of what I implement into these companies is technology related and process related.
Okay.
So like there was a steel company, you know, I was doing like in revenue a year, and you know, they were just a lot more difficult to kind of accept the process. Like it would take me a lot of time. It would be really inefficient for me to, you know, come to like weekly meetings and things like that. So I had to think about like what kinds of people, the kinds of companies, you know, that I want to work with. And I think they tend to be companies that are, you know, they're open to change within their own, you know, business. But then also with getting information, with, you know, assessing metrics, being open to saying like, hey, like these are some things that I would work on. And so I feel like the conversations I've had tend to be with hospitality, you know, technology, creative companies. So that's been my focus. I don't seek out, you know, manufacturing, say that those can never be clients, but so it's not necessarily like an industry specific thing for services, but there is kind of a mentality that I look for.
Yeah. And just like the ability to enact change is probably huge. We find that some of our criteria is the person that we're communicating with be like more of a single person, not necessarily like a board or a group or a committee. But that you can, it's important for us when we present our work for there to be instant feedback and approval. And so I definitely can relate in that some of the clients we've worked with in the past, it's just hard. Like you make these suggestions or present, you know, a path forward, and it just sort of sits there because it's hard. They're not as flexible with some of those suggestions, and Adam's coaching even. That's really
so
cool.
Being ready and committed. Another thing would be like, can I best help them within my business model? You know, so like the way I structure CFO services and really any sort of, you know, consulting or coaching, it's always, you know, it's a monthly thing. It's a monthly service. And there's structure to it. With CFO services, like I said, it just depends on the client, but it can be, you know, anywhere from like 8 to 12 hours a month. There are deliverables that happen. Sometimes it's customized a little bit, but for the most part, you know, there's core things that are happening. And, you know, I structure my payments to be, you know, they're due up front. They're set up through Stripe. So I don't have to worry about, you know, sending an invoice and getting it and make sure, you know, that all happens. It's just, here are the deliverables, here's what's going to be happening. And then I work them. And, you know, it's, you know, I always tell my clients, like, you can always call me, you know, you can email me whenever you have a question or anything. But people tend to, for the most part, work within that monthly, you know, kind of weekly deliverable time frame. When I worked with clients before, where I was like, let's just, you know, I'll just do it hourly, and it'll just be, you know, whatever, like we'll just work on things as it happens. It tends to be really unproductive. In some cases, the client's like, I'm working so much, and the client is almost trying to I don't know if you've ever been like approached by someone who's like, "Hey, I want to work with you," but then they like kind of are telling you what to do all the time. You know, you hire me, like you don't know how to do my job.
Yeah.
So yeah, can I best help them within my business model? And I like I said, in October, I kind of defined a few things about who I'm going to work with and how the process will be. And those, I mean, it made me turn down a lot of work, but when I think about the work that I've taken, it's been so much better. And I'm still working with all the clients that, you know, I had after I decided to change.
Oh, that's cool.
Did you lose a lot? Like, did you transition a lot, or was it just
there was just a couple of like ongoing clients I let go of. One was I was doing an evaluation for a doctor. He was looking to buy a practice in the state, and typically when you're doing those, the seller and the buyer should be very separate, because you know you want to have that third party. Like I would be the independent person who's doing evaluation, and that person should handle all of the like getting the data and then asking the questions and assessing the value of the practice. When the interested buyer is involved too much and too close to the seller, then it can lead to all these like the seller feeling like I'm on someone's side, like I'm trying to get a good deal and trying to I would value it lower. And there's just things like that. I mean, I've done like 400 valuations in my previous job and know some of those things about, and he was just so hands-on and requiring so much data from the seller. Just, I mean, it probably dragged out for like 9 months, and evaluation should take about 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a difference.
Not only 9 months worth of,
No, yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay, so I wanted to ask 2 questions, but you just said you did business evaluations for like 400 people, or 400 business evaluations. The average person listening to this will probably never be in a scenario where there's a business evaluation being done. What are like the type of things that you learn? And so if someone's doing a business evaluation, if they're bringing on a new partner or they're selling their business, buying a business, like in what scenario do people do those things?
Usually it's, I mean, they're retiring, which probably your listeners are not probably doing that, but they're retiring. They are bringing on a partner. They want to know, how much things are worth so they can structure like a buy-in plan or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's some like probably movement in equity at some point, and we have to establish what this is worth. Mm-hmm. So what are things, so after doing 400 of those, watching people, I imagine if you're working on a doctor's practice, he's probably run that practice for a while and is retiring. There's probably just like a ton of wisdom inside of your experience with all of that. Share some of those things. Like, what have you seen that's been like what have you seen people do that puts their business at a really good spot to exit later in the future? Or what is something where you're like, man, they just dumped their life into this and they don't have much left? Like, what makes a difference as far as company value?
That profit margin is huge. And consistency in the profit margin, growth in revenue or just stable revenue. So not like 20% down 1 year and then 3% up the next year, and then like having pretty stable revenue or just growth in revenue. Having a stable profit margin or a profit margin that is around what it should be for that industry is important. Like good management and just leadership within the company, especially if employees are staying or even if they're not. Making sure that you have reasonable expenses again for you.
Mm-hmm. So basically, I'm like thinking, I'm hearing, Joe, is all of the like designers and photographers listening to this are like, what if their like logo is really good? Like, that has to add something, right?
No. I mean, so I always tell people, the work is it's going to show in the numbers. Most of the evaluations I did with physicians, and they're physicians that they think they're so awesome and they're great in practice for 30 years. But some of those things are off. They're overpaying their staff. Their productivity is not great. And, just because their numbers, their revenues in the millions, their profit margin could be horrible. And, they might be running all kinds of, expenses through the company to make their profit margin look, well, it actually ends up hurting them. But it comes down, that's always going to be reflected in the numbers. People will be like, oh, I've been in business for 30 years. And I'm like, yeah, and you've been paid for 30 years. Business, you've been rewarded in that way. And now your business, you're not doing as much revenue as it's dropped 30%, from 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Why would someone pay you lots of money if your revenue is going down? Why is it going down? They're like, well, no, there's opportunity. If they just do these things, I'm like, well, why aren't you doing them? And sometimes that could be the case for different reasons, but using that as kind of an excuse to say oh, well, there's a lot of opportunity. You just need to take advantage of it. Then you're talking about risk, right? And someone, depends on what the business is, but a lot of people aren't willing to pay for risk unless it's very, very clear that, it's just measuring the risk, right? I always tell people to think about if they're thinking about, selling a business at any point, think of yourself trying to buy a business, right? Think about the things you care about, the things that would be important to you. Would you care about if a company had been around for several years, but there were things on their valuation that were off? Would you just be like, what? I think I could do better.
Right.
So yeah, I would to sum it up, I would kind of say, growing revenue or stable revenue, profit margin being what it should be. I think clientele also is a big thing. If you have clients that you've had for a long time, things like that, or just consistency, have a niche. Things like that.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I even feel with us, as we've grown and we've worked with, I feel confident in saying hundreds of clients. I don't know exactly how many though.
Yeah, no, it's almost 300.
Is it?
Yeah.
This feeling of, it can be really overwhelming. And a lot of the clients that we work with aren't necessarily at a point where they're retiring or bringing in a partner, but they sort of need to be told, this is what you should be focusing on. And some of the best advice I think that Adam has given to people, either through our workshops or classes, is you can't do it all. Don't try to be on every social media platform. Don't try to wear every hat in your business if you don't have to. And so working with people like you, Joe, or other, a lawyer, something like that, can be so beneficial. And a lot of people can skip over it and really start paying for it later down the road, even though they've, quote, existed for, 10 years, 5 years. That's not really the mark of a great business,
Hiring good people.
That, they wanted to meet, they had done their taxes already last year, but they had some questions about taxes for next year and just some other just business, kind of small business questions. And I was like, well, how are you organized? And they're like, we're a partnership. And I was like, okay, why did you decide that? And they were like, well, we just read online the right thing to do. And I was like, who did your tax return? Like, oh, well, we did it. And I was, you did your partnership return? And they're like, and I was like, have you ever done a partnership return before? And they're like, no. And so I was like, you just send me your partnership return just so I can look at it. I won't even charge you anything. The partnership returns are very confusing and can be very difficult.
Yeah.
So, and they're like, well, we read the instructions. Instructions are 94 pages. So I,
you're like, I
got a text from one of them 2 weeks ago, and they were like, hey, we got this $2,700 penalty from the IRS from.
Oh my gosh.
Do we have to do we have to pay it? And I was like, send me your return. Because that's the reason. It's not because I'm just trying to charge someone money. It's, I know the complexity of it, and you shouldn't be doing partnership return taxes Yeah, you
on
should.
your own.
It's not worth it because
Yeah.
my fee is a fraction of $2,700 for a partnership return. So
for sure.
Yeah, don't try to do legal work on your own. Don't try to do taxes or financial stuff. I mean, if you're not like skilled at something, focus on skill.
Yeah, don't do it. Yeah, do what you're good at. I even remember when I Adam, you go.
No, you go.
Oh, you go. You go ahead.
No, I was just thinking of that stuff. I was this year when I started the coffee roasting company, I was obsessed with trying to learn as much as I could on my own, kind of as a experiment to learn more, and just put myself, be like, what can I learn this on my own? Because a lot of the people who work with us are just at a different place with their business where I had friends, I had all these smart people who've helped me with other things. And I could probably shoot them a text and they would kind of guide me along the way. And I kind of wanted to see what it was like to just do it with no help. Mm-hmm. And so I started researching, like, what are the health codes for shipping a product like coffee and like selling that? And it is so confusing. It is insane. Mm-hmm. I had 3 different documents off of the state of Ohio website. And then one that was like from, I don't know what, like FDA or something. And all of them seemed like that was the document that would tell me the answer to what I was trying to figure out. And none of them clearly stated it in a way that made sense to a normal person. And it's legal stuff and accounting, especially tax stuff, is just like, do not try at home. Find someone else who can handle those things. It is not ever worth it. It was crazy. I'm curious, Joe. So you, like, Allie and I first probably saw you in the world in college, and you were playing in a band. Like, you're a musician, you're a creative person, which is not what someone expects the person who's filing the taxes to be. But what part of what I like to ask on this podcast is we want to understand what are the things below the surface that, I mean, you are an accountant, CFO, what are something that helps you be successful at the thing that you're doing? Maybe it's personality, maybe it's experience, maybe it's like, I just really freaking love food and business models, and so that's it. Like, what is it that somebody else couldn't just replicate, and from what you're doing to if they were trying to do something themselves?
I'd say I love connecting. I love connecting people to. I love connecting with people. I just enjoy that a lot. Learning about people and figuring out what they're about, and what they want to do, and so. I think that plays into business a lot for me. So like if someone moves to Indy, a lot of times I'll get an email from someone and they'll be like, hey, this person, you should connect with Joe. Joe, this is this person. This is the person, this is Joe. Joe, this person's, a little bit about the background. This is a little bit about Joe. They're looking for a job or something, whatever it is. And I love getting people to like where they want to go or where they want to be, whether it's a job or if they're looking for like volunteer opportunities or like board service, or they're trying to start their own thing or they need help with taxes. I think for me, it first starts with, I just get a lot of satisfaction out of people like the story later, right? Hey, I went to this place and, I was looking for fried chicken in India. I went to that place and it was amazing. It's so good. Like, I just love that, like, they're looking for this thing or they want to be involved in this and then they do it. And then they're like, that's what I wanted. So.
And I got it.
What place is that?
that is Thunderbird. Actually.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Actually, like, I think it was last weekend. I was there and one of my friends came in with her boyfriend and he was like, Joe, what should I get here? And I was like, dude, get the fried chicken. And he sent me a Facebook message and was like, I do not have words in English to
in English. I need to learn another language to describe how good this is.
So I think it comes out of that. I mean, I will always meet with people who want to, who are especially new. Because I'm really passionate about Indianapolis, and so I'm always trying to get people connected. Because I know that when you move to a new city, it's important the experiences that you have in the first like 90 days, about whether you like it or not. It's crazy because it's the Midwest, it's Indianapolis, and people move here from San Francisco and they'll be like, oh my gosh, this place is amazing. I love it. I love my experience here. And it's not because they came to the flattest possible city and experiences, and they kind of, they found what they were looking for. They got connected to that. So I think that for me is a huge thing.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that's the drive. That's the motivation.
Yeah. It's like connection. And I was just explaining this to someone else about the kind of people we work with, but the difference that we feel like we make is facilitating someone to have a life that fills them up. And so whether that's more time at home with their family or working and sort of that hustling mindset, it doesn't really matter what form it takes. I think it's just really, I don't know, it fuels us to feel like we're making a difference in someone else's day-to-day life and reducing stress and taking care of themselves. That's always been such a huge part of our story. Yeah. So that's what we look for in helping other people.
Yeah, and those are the people who made a difference in our life. Those are people who, it's like I use the app Time Hop that shows you things you posted like 4 years ago. And it was 4 years ago, I sent a text message. It was 4 years ago today. I sent a text message to our tax guy.
Yeah.
That was like, thanks so much for all of your guidance. Like, I know that you're doing taxes for our business, but this like helps Allie and I be relaxed, and it helps our marriage be better, and it helps us like feel okay about the world. You know, it's way more than that.
Yeah.
And I think when you get to work with small businesses, you get to feel that a little bit. At least that's been our
experience.
Yeah, I had one of my clients who owns a lighting company. He's like had amazing growth over the last 2 years. But every time we meet to talk about quarterly taxes, we meet at the cigar bar and we smoke cigars and drink whiskey. And
you like make it a tradition.
Dude, Joe's making a heavy play to become our tax guy.
Okay, we'll be there.
Shout out to Eric. But step up your game, man. Joe's like offering cigars.
True story. The first time I ever went to a cigar bar was in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great.
Oh, sorry.
What?
Since the connecting people is it's a big thing. And then another thing is like, I just love doing things. I'm not like against traditional ways of doing things by no means. If it works and it's great, awesome. But I feel like in a lot of areas in my life, I always like approach things kind of differently. Like accounting, like do we have to do accounting the way it's been done for so long, or CFO services? I mean, for a long time, I didn't do CFO services because I was like, I'm too young. Like I've never 29-year-old CFO. I was like, well, what does the CFO do? So I actually met with hey, this is what I'm thinking about providing. What do you do?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, you can totally do it. And I was like, I don't have to have like 15 years of accounting experience. And it's like, no, you just have to know, you have to have the skills to be able to do what you want to do. And I found that a lot of CFOs, like, they do the same thing. They provide you, whether they're inside a company or they're external, they provide stuff that the client doesn't need or doesn't care about, or it's not helpful. It's all about like, how can we do this better? And so I feel like I come to problems with a kind of unique approach, because I don't necessarily go with what's been done for a long time. I go, what about that is good and what about that works? And then what about that doesn't? And is there a new way to do that? So that's, for me, is a big thing.
Yeah. There's a lot to be, I think there's a lot of benefit to that. And it's how I feel like I even approach photography, even though I took photography classes at school.
Elaborate on this. I know what you're. Yeah,
but I don't feel like I learned a lot in the photography classes. I feel I really liked my professors in those courses, but I just wasn't at a place where that was how I learn. And when I go in on shoots, or how I even structure licensing, I'm just like, I just want to do this the way that it feels the most helpful for my clients and the most streamlined and how it makes sense in my brain. So even how I teach classes, I get a lot of people who come up to me afterwards and they're like, oh, I took photo classes at all these other places and it was so technical and I didn't get it. And there's so much to be said for people taking and sharing what they know based on how they interpret it and how they feel like is the smartest approach. So we relate to, when you were talking, I was looking at him like, that's exactly how we feel like we approach it.
Yeah. And I think it's been for everything that we do, it's just been all self-taught. I think, Allie, you had some design classes that paid off, but it's just been so much self-learning. Mm-hmm. And I think anyone who's any good, that's what it is anyways. Yeah. Like you've got, even if you're like the dean's list and you pull through business school with an accounting degree, like 10 years later, you're going to have forgotten most of that stuff. Like you got to keep after it. Yeah. Especially with technology, you can't be done.
Expect kind of the way I do business every year to not change drastically, but I it changes. Yeah. I think, and that's definitely a switch from the very kind of traditional professional services industry I come from. It's we've done it for this way, and this is how it's done, and this is how you do it. I think accounting, and even maybe legal services, I think it's going to take a while for them to kind of like get ahead of kind of where they've been. I mean, because there's so much, like I said, there's so much tradition in even down to the culture and the the way they dress and everything, that I think from multiple standpoints, from client related standpoint, from employee and culture. I mean, there's a lot of people that I know that are leaving legal and they're leaving accounting, not necessarily because they like hate work or their job, but there's something about the culture that's it's just not appealing to them.
I have never thought of that in that way, but so many of our, Allie and I always joke that we could set up a booth outside of a big law office, and we could set up a booth maybe inside of some of the like big retail headquarters that are here in Columbus, and we would have like lifelong amounts of clients because so many people are inside of those spaces who are really high performers. They're very skilled. They know what the heck they're doing. They know how to interact with people. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, I just want to do my own stuff. Or like this thing doesn't fit. Yeah.
Or find a small business that connects with me on some of those perks of like, I want to get a lot of people I feel like would give up some of that stability for flexibility or, time off, things like that.
And even like the firm I was at, one of the things I think was hard to do was to try to improve process. And for me, that's like, I'm doing that all the time. I'm doing that for clients and I'm doing that in my own business. Like for example, there was one project that I got pulled into. This is when I was at that firm and I wasn't originally on it. And by the time I like created this whole new model and it decreased the amount of time it took to do that project for future projects by 62%. We're talking like $45,000 projects.
Yeah.
But at first, one of the partners who was on it, he was like, I think this is a waste of time. How have you been doing it? And after that, one of my coworkers did a project and I was on vacation. I came back and I was like, hey, when you finally did it through the new model, how long did it take? And she was like, it took 3.5 hours instead.
Oh my God.
Instead of like, the first one we did was like 2 months. So.
Oh my God.
Like, my name is Joe. Please make me a partner.
It's like, what you said, Allie, like what feels right and like what's going to produce the best thing for the client.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest, I don't know what I would call it. The biggest catchphrase I've been using lately, and this is such an intuitive thing to say. It's before actually looking at some of those statistics or numbers, but for our own business, but for our clients, I'm like, try something different. Like, quit standing by these rules that you've always had in force for yourself or for your employees or for your own like partnership, and just experiment. Try something else. Play around with your processes. if things aren't working, if you're looking at your numbers, your cash flow, your profit, and it feels off, like, why would you just dig your heels deeper? You know, like, why wouldn't you try something else? And that tends to be, at least gets you out of like this stubborn, oh, well, this is just how we do it mentality.
For sure.
That's awesome. So final question, we like to ask this at the end of most podcasts, but what different apps or tools, even specifically for your business, it could even be like coaching, your own coaching, or
what have you spent money on, invested in, that you're like, this paid off?
So there haven't been a ton. I mean, some of it's specific to like what I do. This is like, you know, quick.
Yeah. Software. Mm-hmm.
But a couple of things. One is Meister. Well, two: Meister Task and MindMeister. So MindMeister is like a mind mapping app. Mm-hmm. You can kind of plot out things. I'm a kind of visual person, so I like to kind of see.
Yeah. So
there was a point where I was, like I said, I was offering every service under the sun. And when I plotted them out, I was like, this is, I can't even this in like 2 minutes to someone. This is crazy. So when people would ask me like, what do you do? I'd be like, well, you know, a lot of things, valuation, and like, what's valuation? You know, it was crazy. So you know, that helped me to kind of map out like, okay, what are all the things I'm doing? I was using so many different things. I had so many different like pages, my website, that I realized like, you need to do like two things, which was huge. Like I said, I turned down a lot of work because of that. Yeah. But first of all, I mean, if I compare like the, you know, like what I was being paid versus what I was like, not even a question. It gave me clarity in my mind. Just like, I'm not doing a million things. I'm just doing these three things and I'm focusing on them, doing them, you know, really well. So that's one, or those are two. Meister Task is just like a productivity app. It's I just love the way it's laid out, and I kind of start my day with that, and I look at to-dos, and I can see because I'm on a couple of boards, and so I like to just kind of see standing kind of tasks there. Yeah, so those are two things. Stripe, I know it kind of sounds weird because it's a payment, you know, integration, but using like, it's really reoccurring billings. I think what I mean, just investing in a process where I'm doing work and I have deliverables. I know, you know, the way, like I've set up the way that I'm going to deliver this work, and it's just like, I can't even describe how awesome it's been. It's now, like I said, I mean, most of my clients they're recurring billing, and they're more committed. I'm more committed. It's just better all around. That's cool. And I didn't think, you know, that's honestly probably the biggest change I've made in my business. I think that's produced like just the best results so far.
It probably lets you focus on
right. And for a while I was worried about like, oh, well, what if there's this custom thing, or what if this takes more time? And, you know, then I kind of thought like, this is the service I'm providing. Like, I know what that, like, I know like how long it takes. I know what, you know, if there's things are completely out of scope, then, you know, that's kind of per whatever the agreement that was signed or whatever. But, for me to like have, you know, to provide a monthly service essentially, but then every month for things to be so like 1 month takes 5 hours and next month's 10, like why would that happen? It happens. Inefficiency. So for me, it was just like thinking through that. So I would say, so, I mean, Stripe and kind of just the mindset change and how I, the service. And then the last one I would say is Thinkific, because right now I'm putting together a business training. And that software is just, I mean, it's so easy to create any sort of, you know, coursework, training, and you can, you know, there's so many different, like, you know, text and PDFs and video, so easy to use. So that's probably the last one I would say.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad. After listening to you talk, I've been taking notes, and I'm like, I've got to, once we get off this recording, I'm going to go and try and get Joe to like teach everything he knows to people, which is, just dig that. So I'm glad
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing that.
That's amazing. And we'll make sure to link to all the stuff that you talk about, your own website. So you're working on your own courses and resources?
Yeah, so I actually just came up with the name like 2 days ago.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be called Basics, BASIX.
Okay.
And it's going to kind of be last year I met with a lot of people in these kind of consultations where people would ask these questions like, how do I set up a business? How do I set up an LLC? Should I, a partnership? How do I register with the state? Do I need a tax ID? Should I open a business bank account? Just kind of those initial questions, but also questions that people are still thinking about in the first couple of years of business. What deductions, what things can I deduct? What's the benefit of doing pricing one way versus another way? What's an easy way to do invoicing? What's apps that really help, save with time, efficiency? And then some things I know that are important or I've learned, like metrics and just understanding your profit margin, how to quickly be able to calculate that. So this basics will be kind of this, it's really about like small business basics. So it's like, if you're hiring an employee or a contractor, like what do you have to do? Do you have to keep certain forms? Do you have to file forms? Or can that be automatically done by some sort of subscription service? So it's going to be kind of this thing that it just kind of condenses these conversations I've had with a lot of people saying the same things over and over again, which I found to be very inefficient, just meeting with people all the time.
Yeah.
One, because for me, like, it would take like 2 hours out of my day, and I'd be like on the north side, and I'm like, why? And then I'd be like, I should
drive.
Yeah. So it was like really inefficient for me. And then two, it was not helpful because people would always follow up and, hey, what was that thing you said again? And
it's just to have it all in one spot. Yeah. It helps them more. It's like you said, I sometimes feel like that where I'll get coffee with someone who wants to pick my brain and I'm like rambling. Hopefully they're taking notes. And then I'm like, they're going to forget everything I said. I need to just stick this in like a PDF or something.
One thing that, even just thinking through this, like a lot of people, and I had this problem, early on is I have a business. Where are the customers? Or where are the new clients? So just even talking through some of that. And I plan for it to be interactive. So I'll be adding content to it. And then I'll also have these live videos where I'll do like Q&As. And so if people have specific questions or, questions about their industry, they can ask those and we can interact.
Yeah. But that's amazing. Well, we'll keep everyone listening updated on when that's all out there. But thank you so much for your time. Adam took like 2 pages of notes, which means this was an awesome episode for us. But I really appreciate you taking the time to chat. And yeah, we will maybe have you on in the future.
Yeah, and if you're ever in Indianapolis and you need restaurant recommendations, check out Joe and then ask him to tell you where to eat.
Or maybe he'll create an online class to teach you how to figure it out yourself.
Oh my gosh.
That would actually, because, I'm sure there's a lot of things that I do when I research cities before we go. And some people like don't have the capability to figure out how to do that. So I honestly think it would be a good class.
I think I'm glad that we ended the podcast and we're like still talking.
Yeah.
Maybe we just like let the music fade out.
Okay, goodbye.
At this point.
And then we'll keep talking. Today's question is from Tony.
What up, Tony?
On Instagram. She asked, how do you manage content releases? Do you plan out months in advance or are some things released on a shorter timeline? Which is a really good question.
That's a great question, and it's something a lot of people struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
So, you talk about how we do it, and then I'll talk about how some of our clients maybe handle it.
We definitely like to give people enough notice. I would say, and this is like, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking through an event or an online class versus a product, but overall, you like to tease enough to kind of embed into the brain of the people listening. So you don't want to just release something that day and it go live. We like to prepare the idea of an investment or a price point that people can either plan for or feel like they're prepared enough so that when it does release, they're excited to take out their credit card or sign up or whatever.
Yeah.
But we like to think through which different places we want to communicate that. Which social platform are we releasing it via email? Are we going to plug it in person at our events? And all the different things that need to be made to share that, you know? So you have to think through, do I need to create graphics? Do I need to write some copy? Do I need to release preview photos, like give people an idea of what it is? But there is something powerful to tease a product before it's actually available.
Right. We've seen that work so well for so many people. We had one client who they were opening up a store, and they thought they were going to open in maybe 3 or 4 months. And what ended up happening is because they were searching for commercial leases, and anyone who's gone through that experience knows this is a hassle.
Yeah.
It ended up being almost over a year. And so for a year, they had this landing page sitting there that's like, sign up, give me your email for more updates. And what ended up happening is they had almost 1,000 people inside of their email list when they finally found space. They're like, okay, let's log in and see how many people are in there. And so I don't think you can push things too early. I think you can get people bored of hearing from it about it too much.
If the messaging is constantly like coming soon, like give some more specific calls to action or details.
You know who crushes it is
Everlane?
Everlane. No, but I was going to say Beyonce better than Everlane.
Well, yeah.
But her Ivy Park line, like they did some very like noticeable and talked about photography.
Yeah.
And then I've watched them, like they sort of released new things over time. So they had like a big launch of it, and then they had the like sub launches of it. And now that I've seen them share some imagery and content that kind of kicks back and refers to that original launch.
Yeah.
And so it feels like this ever evolving thing. Like they've been launching this season's new collection for a while.
Yeah.
And so thinking through, like, you know, I think one of the things that's difficult is actually having interesting stuff to always be talking about.
Or making sure that it's finished before you start promoting it. Like, don't be in the process of making something while you're teasing it. It is stressful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. But we've seen clients who plan out their year. We've seen clients who record all of their, you know, I met with one person this morning who's going to write like her next 30 blog posts over the weekend.
Yeah.
And then pay someone to edit them and share
Release
them over
it,
the course of the next.
It can be more automated.
Yeah. But planning, I think, is a big part of it. The other part of it is thinking of how do you need to collaborate with anybody on anything? And so I am not very good at making things look pretty compared to the rest of our team. And so anytime I want to share a blog post or something on social or promote a class, I need to do it ahead of time so that I can delegate something to a designer
and not just like throw it on someone last minute.
Yeah, I'll be like, oh, hey, can you do this right now? Because nobody likes to collaborate with me in that sense.
Yeah.
But if Allie needs to create something, or if I always say like Allie drinks like 2 glasses of wine or maybe like 1 glass of bourbon, and then is like, I think I'm going to redo my blog. Like it seems like every time, but you can just do that.
Yeah.
Like it takes no collaboration.
Yeah. It's a very singular individual.
Yeah. And so Tony, I think the answer is 1, you want to keep doing interesting stuff so that you can talk about those things. Tony's been to workshops here, and part of the best thing that happens, we don't have to work very hard at social media if we do really good workshops here, because people post about us and that reaches more people than us posting things anyways.
For sure. But yeah, that's a great question. I think everyone's different.
You got to make it work for you.
Put it in the comment section what you do. I always think that's funny because there's no comment section
of the podcast.
That's why it's funny.
Yeah, just open your notes app and then just type in your response.
Comments,
and then
push enter.
Save that.
Yeah. Email it to me.
Upload it to our iCloud.
Yeah. No, but I really do think that question is huge and varies. But overall, I don't think you can overdo it.
Truth.